Okay. Yep, that's great. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is Amy DeVita, and I'm with Third Sector Today and Top Nonprofits. And today, lucky to have Emily Goodstein from Washington, D.C., who is actually in Austin, Texas at the moment, on the line with us. And Emily is going to present some great information for all of us to share and hopefully utilize easily at our nonprofits with regard to social media. So wanted to give a little overview for those of you who may not be familiar. Third Sector Today and Top Nonprofits are two websites that are dedicated to helping nonprofit professionals elevate their cause. And this is the type of information we love to share with folks. We're trying to create a community where we can really share best tips and best practices from others, other leaders. And Emily Goodstein, lucky to know her, she's an online and social media strategist, and she's a fabulous marketing professional. In the past, she has been profiled in the Washington Post. They did a piece profiling millennial women in the workplace, and it was great to get the chance to see her there. And you may recognize her from monthly podcasts with Third Sector Today. So she delves into really how to engage your constituents via social media and other online strategies in her podcasts for us, which is fabulous. But this new event today is an on-demand recording that is going to take a little deeper dive, and I will let Emily share it with you. But thank you, Emily. With that, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me. I'm really such a fan of Top Nonprofits and Third Sector Today, and as evidenced by the spirit behind my podcast, I hope folks already know that. But I'm just really excited to be here and recording this on-demand webinar, and I hope that folks get a lot of good use out of it. I'm actually, as you mentioned, perched here at a friend's house in Austin, Texas, where I'm in town for the Nonprofit Technology Conference, where I hope to learn even more about online marketing and social media strategy for nonprofits. In this presentation, I sort of have put together my interest and background in psychology and thoughts and feelings and really the theory behind Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the way that we look at social media strategy and online marketing for organizations and nonprofits. Full disclosure, both of my parents are psychology majors. We're psychology majors. So I grew up in a house where conversation around thoughts and feelings was just like very common around the dinner table. So let's jump in. Reason why we called the presentation what we did is because we are really applying the traditional theory of psychology of Maslow's hierarchy of needs to marketing theory and the way that organizations can craft an effective social media strategy. This is my headshot. I am also a professional photographer, so I spend a lot of time looking at other people's headshots, and I'm just glad to have my own. This is what I look like after getting my hair and makeup professionally done. And also just take note, this is my Twitter handle at Emily Goodstein, 2 O's, no L. And if you end up sharing this with your team, which I hope you will, and you have questions or feedback or you want to spread the word, I hope that you'll tag me on Twitter and connect with me that way. All right, so here's a quick agenda. First, I'm going to share some deep thoughts about the way all these platforms work together. And then I'm going to give you a few of my favorite platform best practices and a little overview. And then I'm going to talk about resources. And then Amy has a few questions that she's going to share with us as well that we kind of cooked up as frequently asked possible questions. So let's get started. So this is who Maslow was. I just have such clear memories of learning about Maslow's hierarchy of needs at Winston Churchill High School in my AP psychology class when I was in 12th grade. And I remember thinking, oh, this makes good sense. This guy kind of knew what he was talking about. And then I filed it away and I didn't really think much of it until I became a social media strategist. And it started coming back multiple times in multiple conversations. And so here's my chance actually to flesh all that out. So hopefully it can get other folks on board and understand why I categorize social media platforms just the way Maslow categorized different human needs. So here we are. This is the real thing. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you take a look at it, it looks like the old school food pyramid, but in my opinion, way more fun. And it sort of spans from a foundation of psychological needs up to the top where the dessert might be on the food pyramid to self-actualization. So starting at the bottom, those are obviously like the very foundational needs, psychological health, mental health, that we need. Moving up, I like the example of belonging. I first learned about this in high school. So if you can think about, having pals that you have things in common with and you feel like you're part of a community, that's a great example of this sort of belonging, second from the top. And then Maslow puts this idea of self-actualization at the very top of his hierarchy. And the really important piece I want to draw everyone's attention to, when you walk away from this webinar, I hope you know more about psychology, but that's actually not a requirement. What I'm more interested in you noticing is the way each of these different items build on the other. So you don't start with self-actualization, so that idea of being happy with oneself in a given moment, even though there are still potential problems in your life. That's not given the same priority as psychological or mental health, right? So there is a spectrum and a foundation, and they're built on a foundation of each other. That's some foreshadowing for my next slide. So now that you have this very quick overview of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, let's move to Emily's hierarchy of needs. I created this because I got questions from clients on a very regular basis about why I was not making the suggestion that they start a robust Snapchat strategy, or Pinterest is such a great platform. I see so many of my friends using it. Why don't we make use of Pinterest? So after getting those questions a few times, I really started making the connections between what Maslow was saying. So all of the things that Maslow talked about are important parts of overall mental health. One of the categories that Maslow has articulated is love, right? I would say love is a very important part of overall health. But it's not the only thing that we care about, and it's not the number one foundational element that we build all emotional and psychological health on. And the same goes for Snapchat or Pinterest. So with this diagram, I want to start from the bottom. I believe that a solid online marketing strategy begins with web and email. Just to draw attention to my little caveat in the lower left here, generalizations do apply. So your organization might thrive without a website, and that is totally great. This is a sample hierarchy. It's not necessarily true for every organization, and I'll explain why that is in a second. But for most organizations, I believe that a strong website and a really effective email strategy is some of the best way to start effectively communicating online. Moving up the next sort of rung of the hierarchy, I believe that Twitter and Facebook are the next two big platforms to pay attention to. And the reason that I put those here is that those are the platforms where the majority of people already are using. So you don't have to build a whole new population to reach your constituency. Again, this is a generalization. So I want to use the example of an organization that I have as a client right now who does a lot of outreach to millennials. So those are folks that came of age around the millennium. And we know that Instagram, which I have listed here as the third item in my hierarchy, Instagram is one of the fastest growing social media platforms for the millennial population. So for that organization, the website is important and email is important, and Instagram is also really important. And I think that for that organization, if I were to build a similar hierarchy, I would actually flip Twitter and Instagram. So that's sort of what I mean when I say generalizations. Not every organization is working with the same constituency. For the majority of organizations that are doing some general outreach, this one really makes sense. You can also replace Snapchat with what the next popular social media tool is going to be in a few weeks or months. Pinterest is really the platform that got me thinking about this hierarchy, because it was that question that I got from organizations on a very regular basis. Well, Pinterest is so cool. Why don't we use Pinterest? And I had to explain multiple times that Pinterest is a great platform if the majority of your constituents are women in their 30s and 40s who are specifically interested in DIY crafts and event planning. It's a great platform for that. In fact, if the majority of your constituents are women in their 30s and 40s, which is the typical profile of a Pinterest user, and you want to get content to them, Pinterest is actually a great place to put that content, because we know that the majority of those constituents already are familiar with Pinterest. They're already using Pinterest. They already have Pinterest accounts. What I don't want people to do is say, oh, well, Pinterest is a cool platform. Let's start with it. We don't have a website or an email strategy. We haven't done anything on Facebook, but we're going to start with Pinterest because our executive director thinks it's a cool platform. That would be a time when you would not be paying attention to the hierarchy of needs. So this is sort of like the money slide. And I want to just make sure folks are really hearing this idea that generalizations do apply. But in my opinion, that strong foundation of web and email mixed with some Twitter and Facebook is a great, strong way for your organization to build an online presence. I would not suggest starting with all of these tools at once, and I would prioritize them for most organizations in this order, starting with web and email. The last thing I'll say, and then we'll move on to the next slide, is an important sort of founding principle that I use when I am working with clients, is that folks need to see, your constituents need to see or consume your message multiple times over different channels. So it doesn't really make sense for you to do all this work on Facebook and invest all of your time on Facebook and only use Facebook. The reason why is that, well, Facebook specifically is going to hinder some access that people have to your content for a whole bunch of other reasons related to the newsfeed algorithm. You can listen to one of my podcasts about that. But if you are only using one channel, you're really doing yourself and your organization's mission a disservice, because we know that human beings consume information well when they hear it in multiple places in different ways. So this is the idea of omni-channel communication. So if you are looking to get folks to come to your spring fundraising event and you are only tweeting about it, but you're not leveraging Facebook and your website and email and actually Pinterest or Instagram or whatever else you've chosen based on your constituency, you're not really doing the best potential job that you can to get the word out about the event. So this is also a helpful tool when thinking about where are your constituents, how do they consume information, and how can we leverage multiple channels to get our message out based on platforms that we know our constituents are already using. All right. So I wanted to share, now that you sort of know where I'm coming from with the hierarchy of social media platforms, I wanted to talk to you about my 6 favorite best practices when using social media tools to communicate online. I hear a lot of organizations talk about the idea of online organizing, and it's completely separate from the grassroots and on-the-ground field strategy that the organization has. Sometimes there are even 2 completely separate departments of people that don't communicate with each other about what's happening online and offline. This is a big problem. The tools that we're talking about, so the tools that we just talked about on our last slide, need to work in concert with offline strategies. So how effective would it be if we just had people going door to door asking folks to sign a petition, but we never did anything with those petition email addresses? We just took them, delivered them to elected officials, and that's it. That's a really wasted opportunity. What I would prefer is to see someone go door to door and leverage a really smart, impactful on-the-ground strategy, collect email addresses, and then use them to send out emails on a regular basis to remind folks that they just have signed a petition. It's a great marriage of the online and offline strategy. It sounds simple, but think about your organization right now. Do a little check in your head. How does your online strategy play with your offline strategy? And are the two of them working together, or are they sort of working in their own silos? And are you leveraging one to help the other one succeed? My next bullet point is about high quality interactions. So I often am approached by potential clients that say, we would like to bring you on to help us get to 10,000 Facebook fans. And to me, that's a huge red flag. I usually say in response, you know what, my work is actually not about helping you just get a metric and check the box to have 10,000 Facebook fans or 100,000 people in your email list. My goal is to help you create high quality interactions with your constituents. And that means people forwarding emails. That means people writing comments on Facebook. That means people sharing your content on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. The next bullet point is about being authentic and real. Not every tweet is a press release. And so it's more important that you get out there, make a joke once in a while, or get out there quickly as opposed to get out there with the most perfectly polished 140 character tweet or the best possible photoshopped photo on social media. What I would really prefer is an actual photograph of your staff doing the work when it's happening. All platforms are not the same. This comes from a big pet peeve that I have. When I see organizations basically repurposing content directly from one platform to another, it usually happens that somebody will have every Instagram photo posted to Facebook or every Facebook status turned into a tweet. And this really says to your constituents, we're not interested in meeting you where you are, and we're not interested in customizing your experience based on each channel that you're looking at. We're just going to take the easy way out and just sort of use a fire hose and send you our content one size fits all to every channel. Another problem with this, the use of all platforms in the same way, is that you really are missing an opportunity. So, for example, on Facebook, I'm known as Emily Pearl Goodstein. And on Twitter, as we saw earlier, I'm known as @EmilyGoodstein. So if you were to tweet at me and have your tweets automatically go to Facebook, I would never see that interaction on Facebook. And the same is true for your organization. The best practices are not that you update your Facebook status 6 times a day, but the best practice is that you do that on Twitter. What is the ask? My next bullet point. So think about the way that you are organizing content in emails and on social media so it's very clear what you want people to do. Don't bury the fundraising link at the end of the email. Don't include 2 different pieces of information in one Facebook status. Make it very clear what you want people to do in a short, breezy way with as few words as possible, and they're more likely to do it as opposed to getting lost in all the verbiage of your Facebook status or your tweet with too many words in it. And omnichannel is my last bullet point, and that's really what we're talking about today with all the ways that the social media channels interact with each other. All right, so for the last few minutes of the presentation, I wanted to just give a few best practices for some of my favorite social media channels. We're going to start with Facebook. Use images with a text overlay and consider putting links in the caption of images. This is a great way to boost some of the work that you do or to make sure the Facebook algorithm is playing in your favor. We could do an entire other webinar just about the Facebook algorithm, so I'm not going to do that today, but consider putting links in captions and using text as an overlay on top of images, really just to get your content to pop in the newsfeed. Don't forget about that banner. Your organization has a Facebook page with this beautiful, huge banner at the top. And I often suggest that folks change the banner every time they launch a new campaign to ensure that you're using that huge space that people often look to first when they first visit your Facebook page. And lastly, Facebook likes Facebook. So the chances of your content getting shown in the Facebook algorithm if it's a picture are better than if it's a link to another website. So again, we'll flag that for our next on-demand webinar, but for now, just remember that photos do perform very well on Facebook, and Facebook is a business, and the website wants you to stay on their website as long as possible. Twitter. So this is a screenshot of the new Twitter profile. I see too many organizations use that Twitter bio space poorly. So change that Twitter bio often. Again, just like the Facebook banner, put something in about your recent campaign. Give me the date of your book launch. Tell me the date and the link to register for your fundraising dinner. The Twitter bio should not be static. And the thing that's great about the Twitter bio is that whenever you follow someone on Twitter, if they have their settings configured this way, an email is sent to them showing your Twitter bio. So it's this great piece of real estate. It's a spotlight on your Twitter bio in the inbox. So don't let that go to waste. Don't forget about hashtags. I think sometimes hashtags get a bad rap because people make jokes about them. Hashtag FOMO. I suffer from it myself. But hashtags are such a powerful way to categorize content, get new followers, infiltrate a event or campaign that sort of is the antithesis of what your organization is doing. A great example to look at is the Black Lives Matter campaign and the power behind that hashtag. And lastly, use lists. Twitter is such a huge, super saturated channel that there's no way that you're going to be able to stay on top of everything that everyone is doing that you follow on Twitter. So if you put a few key players that you want to make sure you follow very closely into a list, it's a much easier way to take advantage of the tool. And Instagram, we talked a lot about Instagram as that sort of tipping point channel. And how Instagram is a great place to go if you're looking to reach millennials. It's also a very diverse channel. We know that it has the highest number of new users of color of any other channel. That's research-based. It's a few months old now, but I think it's still helpful to sort of guide the choices you make when you look at your own social media hierarchy of needs. And don't forget that you can use hashtags here in this channel as well. All right, a few very quick resources I want to share. I love Beth Cantor's Pinterest page, and you know Beth Cantor by now if you follow what's going on Third Sector today and in the nonprofit technology space. She curates a whole bunch of really helpful infographics on her Pinterest page. The Nonprofit Technology Conference, I mentioned that earlier. I'm going to head to their conference. The AFL-CIO digital trainings are really great. They're free. They're very thorough. They're a lot about organizing on the ground, grassroots and digital organizing. The NP Engage blog, full disclosure, I used to work for Blackbaud. This is their blog, so you might see my name pop up there. The M&R benchmark study comes out annually, and it's a survey of the M&R clients and the way that they are doing online marketing and fundraising. The New Organizing Institute, as well as Which Test Won, which is a great website to learn more about A/B testing. And of course, Third Sector Today, and I will just plug again the Third Sector Today podcast, which I usually produce once or twice a month, and it's all about different online marketing and social media tools for nonprofits. So I'm going to actually quickly skip over the question slide and just give you my contact information, and then we'll go back to questions. You should feel free to contact me via Twitter or email. You can also check out some of my photography if you want at emilygoodstein.com. So we'll go back to questions, and I'll ask you, Amy, to hop back in and let me know what you're thinking.
Okay, Emily, thank you. I'm here. I'm back. And yes, everybody out there, Emily is fabulous. I'm glad she shared her contact info, and we'll put that up again at the end. So certainly she's very approachable, as you might be able to tell from her voice and her demeanor and all that we know about Emily. So certainly feel free to reach out to her with specific questions that you might have. But let's go and, Emily, let me throw a couple questions at you that are, the typical frequently asked questions. So this is probably on several people's minds. Since email is that bottom, right, the largest need of Emily needs in that social media hierarchy. My question, I guess the question is, isn't, email already super saturated? And what advice do you have given that?
That's a great question. And it's definitely one that I get on a regular basis. So email is a super saturated channel. That's exactly why it's not the only thing that I'm suggesting folks use. I think email is often forgotten. And when we are so accustomed to thinking about social media because it's new and shiny, we forget that email actually is a very powerful channel, especially when used in conjunction with a lot of other channels. So if you think back to what I was saying about the fact that people need to see and consume content multiple times until it actually sinks in. So email is a great way to get in one or two more of those times that we're talking about. And another reason why I love email is that at the end of the day, Facebook owns all the names of your fans. You don't own their contact information. Facebook does. So email is still one of the very few ways that we have to actually keep constituent data and control when and how we message to it. And we're very lucky to live in a time when there are a lot of low cost, really affordable and effective email marketing tools out there. And I will always, at least in the immediate future, I will always be a big fan of email and talk about how email is such an important foundational element, even if it is super saturated. But I spend all my time on email. I carry email in my pocket. So why wouldn't nonprofits want to leverage email that way?
I fully agree. And, I interviewed John Hayden, who I'm sure a lot of you folks out there are familiar with, another excellent social media strategist and expert. And, his words were, your email list, that's really your gold, right? That's your golden list of people who you have connections with. And as Emily just said, that's where you have your data. That's where that relationship lives. So it's really important to keep that fine-tuned. And thanks for giving us some food for thought on that. So another question. My daughter, and you probably know this, my daughter is 11 and a half. So she is her own, she is a social media expert of a whole nother kind. And what I see too is they're big YouTubers. I went to a concert this year with her to go see a YouTuber live and in person. But of course, that being said, since she is such a social media expert, she says that everybody's on Pinterest. So the question, that begs the question, should an organization concentrate there, or what advice do you have?
That's again something really good for organizations to think about. So I think that Pinterest is really cool. I was up until an embarrassing hour last night, Pinterest searching rainbow cupcakes because my niece has requested them for her birthday that's coming up next month. So I like Pinterest just as much as the next social media enthusiast. I think Pinterest is great in very specific situations. So if you look at that hierarchy, there's really two different times when I think Pinterest is great. If you look at that hierarchy and you say, you know what? We have a really good strategy on these foundational platforms. And I feel like, our staff has a really good content strategy. We're posting content on a regular basis. We're growing our fans. We're meeting our growth goals for email and fundraising. What else can we do to add a new element to our online marketing strategy and potentially engage new constituents? That's one time when I would start thinking about Pinterest. In addition to that same sort of first time, I would also think, is the content that you have very visual? Does it somehow relate to the ways that people use Pinterest? So Beth Cantor uses Pinterest in a way that's not as traditional as a lot of other people. She uses it to curate content online. And at the end of the day, Pinterest really is a website that saves links, right? It's a website you can go to where you might have tagged and saved a lot of content to look at later. Mm-hmm. So Pinterest is usually used by people especially about cooking and sort of crafting and in-home how-to things. So if your content relates to that, so if you are, sponsoring a contest for people to dress up as specific things for Halloween as a fundraiser and you want to give ideas on how to make the costumes, Pinterest is great, especially if you have those other platforms locked and loaded. The other time I would think about using Pinterest is when you know that your constituency is very specifically interested, very specifically lives on Pinterest. So again, looking at that demographic data, we know it's women in their 30s and 40s who use Pinterest most. That's the largest growing constituency on Pinterest. So if you're an organization that is targeting moms and you really want to get in touch with that age cohort and that gender, go for it. Pinterest is great. It's not great for like the brand new organization that doesn't have anything else, that's starting from scratch, that moves immediately from zero to Pinterest. That I wouldn't recommend it then.
Yeah, and just to really, I guess, underscore again, it's that demographic, and as an organization, as the marketing person at your organization, to really think about who is your audience and fine-tune your channels based on that. So let's take this from another way, rather than expanding the number of social channels. What if I'm an organization and it's really just me who's handling all the social media, all the outreach, development, everything, the computers, the IT, and let's just say I only have time for one social media channel. Emily, what would it be?
So I would have to say, knowing what I know about this hypothetical organization, I would say Facebook. And again, the consultant in me a little bit bristles by even making a recommendation at all, because that is a judgment call based on what I know of a general small organization that potentially is reaching out to a broad group of people. We know that Facebook is a household name. We know that it has more users than most any other social media platform, if not any other social media platform. And we know that that's sort of that's the definition of meeting people where they are. I have thoughts on Facebook because of a lot of the things we talked about earlier. You don't own your data. There's reasons why brands and nonprofit page content is not prioritized, but another topic for another webinar. The short answer is Facebook, because it's probably where most of your constituents already are.
Yeah, it's got the eyeballs for sure, and I that makes some sense. And again, you did make it very clear with the asterisk on the first or second slide that these are generalizations. So everybody, every case is going to be unique, and it's certainly important to take those into account. But having this type of information is so helpful. And Emily, thank you. I hope you'll come back and we can do this again sometime. I think it's yay. It's certainly helpful, and you covered a lot of important topics. Again, let's talk about this a little bit deeper from time to time. And if you have questions, Emily, if you want to leave that slide up with your contact information, and certainly encourage folks. And on another note, as Emily mentioned, we are going to be at the Nonprofit Technology Conference in Austin, Texas, March 4th through 6th, and looking forward to meeting a whole lot of folks down there. So if y'all are there, stop by, say howdy. We will be, from time to time, we'll be at our booth at 531, so feel free. That would be fun to see you all at the Science Fair, which is the exhibit hall at the Nonprofit Technology Conference. If you can't make it, you can follow along with the festivities, the fun, all of the stuff. Follow the hashtag. It's hashtag 15NTC. And the last thing I'd like to leave you all with is I would encourage you or ask you to take a moment, complete the survey at the end of this webinar, this on-demand event, trying to fine-tune our offerings to be useful, and believe it, I do read the comments and the suggestions, so please share with me. The offering of this on demand versus a live webinar is one of the is the result of a comment. So I do take them very much to heart and want to be able to be a helpful resource and continue to do that. So with that, I'm going to say thank you much for joining us. Feel free to contact me if I can be of any help to you. You have Emily's contact information and great brain to tap for any social media and online marketing strategies. Take care. Have a great day. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.